It is, of course, St. Patrick's Day, which makes it mid-March, which makes it, of course, prime real estate for college football discussion, at least here at the Voice of College Football. Florida State Seminoles live every Wednesday night, 6 o'clock Eastern time. And we're happy to be joined, of course, by Jason Parker of NBC6, who is riding a one-show losing streak right now. So, Jason, it's great to see you and that you could get back on the saddle.
I would like to apologize for missing last week's show. I blame, like most good Florida State alums do, I blame the Miami Hurricanes. Their basketball team winning in the ACC tournament forced me to stay later at work. I do apologize for that. Are we the only two people not celebrating St. Patrick's Day?
It's like a big deal. It is a big deal. I'm sorry. It just kind of creeps up on me. So, yeah, we're not very festive.
Stay tuned, because at some point, Logan Robinson from NoleGameDay will drunk stumble in here. So you're going to want to see that. So stay tuned. Whether it's 10 minutes from now, 15 minutes from now, who knows? But at some point, Logan Robinson will drunk stumble in here. Stay tuned.
Well,
you're going to
based on the reports I'm receiving, let's just hope that he makes it in here and then nothing too embarrassing transpires after that.
Well, they have Uber, so he should be okay.
Okay. All right. The Florida State basketball team plays Friday or Saturday?
They play Saturday at 12:40 on True TV, followed by Impractical Jokers and other great True TV programming. I'm excited. Wait. Folks, are we talking basketball? Is my dream coming true?
It being the time of year that it is, I thought that I would just open up with a courtesy line to introduce the basketball game that's coming up on Saturday.
Yes, the fourth-seeded Florida State Seminoles, who choked their way through the ACC tournament, take on the UNC Greensboro Spartans, 13th seed. Get excited in the state of Indiana. What are your thoughts, Mark? What are your thoughts on the basketball team?
My thoughts about Florida State basketball.
Have you seen a basketball game this season from Florida State?
Oh my goodness, have I seen a basketball game? I did not see one basket scored until about 3 days ago.
Okay, good.
For the entire basketball season, NBA or college basketball. I couldn't tell you what's going on in the NBA. When I was back at ESPN, I would, by osmosis, have to know what's going on to a certain extent. But this was my introduction to college basketball this year. I was on Twitter the other day, and I saw that Ohio State and Michigan were playing, which would have been a big deal for me 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 years ago, but it was not. I didn't even know that they were playing. So I thought, you know what, while I'm sitting here working, I might as well throw the basketball game on. Do you know what my first thought was? I flipped the basketball game on. I see that it's very sparsely attended. Well, we all know why it's sparsely attended. It didn't even hit me for like 5 minutes. For 5 minutes, I was thinking, why are there so many empty seats at an Ohio State Michigan semifinal game at the Big Ten tournament? And then it finally hit me. Oh, this COVID thing's going on, apparently. Okay, got it. And then the next day, of course, Ohio State hung on for the victory. They played Illinois in the Big Ten championship game the next day. Completely slipped my mind. Got a text from my son at some point in overtime to say, hey, this is a great game. And I was like, I forgot about it. That's my basketball viewing for the year.
And that is why Mark Rogers is the voice of college football and not the voice of college basketball, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm locked into college football all the time. So for me, the Devon Mortimer news, much more prevalent than even Florida State's run possibly through the NCAA tournament.
And this is where we needed Logan and Big Game James Coleman to tell me how great things are going in the recruiting world, why I should join the Norvell train, the Ryan Bartow train, the every assistant coach train. But it's a very good move. Devon Mortimer, wide receiver commit from Fort Lauderdale Dillard. He committed to Florida State on Saturday. Says he grew up a huge Florida State fan. He's a 3-star wide receiver from Fort Lauderdale Dillard High School. Dillard's not a school Florida State has had a lot of success getting players from in the past. A lot of their guys tend to go to Miami, FAMU, other schools, but he's a good guy. He is fast. I've seen him play multiple games. He is a very fast receiver. He's also a very tiny receiver. He's 5'11", 160. I don't care who you are. I don't care how fast you are. 160 will get you killed in major college football. So he's a good guy. But he played for a team in Dillard. They went undefeated in the regular season. They ended up playing in the Tri-County tournament, which was a tournament for schools in Palm Beach County, Broward, and Dade County that didn't want to play in the FHSA tournament. Dillard ended up winning that. He was named all first team Broward County by the Miami Herald, South Florida Sun Sentinel. He's got a lot of pub. He had it was 5 touchdowns last season. I'm just going to pull up his stats very quickly. Yeah, 24 catches, 318 yards, 5 touchdowns. So it was a decent season for him, but I think it's a good move. I like that Florida State is starting to come back into South Florida, getting recruits from the state of Florida. But 160, that scares me. 5'11", 160. That worries me.
Well, he hasn't played a senior season yet, so he still has more than about a year and a half before he would actually step on the field potentially, and he probably wouldn't even play as a freshman. So there was some room for growth there. Now, back to your earlier comment concerning the Mike Norvell recruiting efforts, it has been impressive. Now, we are sitting here in mid-March, and those commitments have to hold until at least December, if not February. So Florida State fans should have a cautionary tale to a certain extent, because as you have mentioned a number of times, Jason, to set you up here, the season win total could be crucial.
Absolutely. I feel like that, and once again, this is why I've said this the last couple of seasons, that Notre Dame game is so important. Florida State has to come out in the Notre Dame game and play like a Florida State team that we know they're capable of. The Florida State team who kind of, for lack of a better term, played the way they did in the first half against Notre Dame this season, where they were competitive, they were in it. I don't fully, and I will be there. I'll be rooting for the Noles, chopping up the whole time. I don't expect Florida State to win that opener against Notre Dame, but I need it to be competitive. 10 points, 14 points, something close. That's what you need. You need that. You need to split the rivalry games, at least one win over a Miami or Florida. You know, we'll talk about that over the course of the summer, who they may have a better chance of getting a win against. I think you have to do that. You have to make some momentum, because you can't go out there and lay an egg against Notre Dame, Clemson, Miami, Florida, North Carolina, and then expect to keep all these recruits. I think you'll keep a decent amount of them. I think Travis Hunter stays. I think Devon Mortimer is one of these guys who will stay with Florida State. But if they play like they've played the last 3 or 4 seasons, you're not going to see that current class that's ranked number 9 end up signing come early signing day in December.
Is there some type of connection between Travis Hunter and Florida State? Because he's not a Florida kid. He's from Georgia. We're talking about one of the 4 best players in the country, regardless of position. We're talking about.
He's a guy who, you know, we've talked about him right now. He's the number 1 player in the state of Georgia, from up in Suwanee, Georgia. Number 2 in his position, 4th ranked nationally. He's a top 5 national player right now. And currently, right now, Florida State has 2 of the top 35 players in both him and Sam McCall from Lakeland's Lake Gibson High School. I think with Hunter and we've talked about this in the past, he's a guy who sees that potential from Florida State, but he also sees that exposure. He sees that he is probably going to be on the playing field inside Doak Campbell Stadium getting serious reps on either offense or defense, or as Logan says, Logan believes he'll be on both sides of the ball. He just may. But he's going to be on national TV against Notre Dame. He's going to be on national TV against Clemson. He's going to be on national TV against Miami, against Florida, against North Carolina. There's nearly half the schedule nationally televised. Greatest example of that would be Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown grew up down here in Miami, wanted to go to Florida State, grew up a Florida State football fan, ended up at, I believe it was Western Michigan, Central Michigan, one of the directional Michigan schools. And he always said that one of the reasons was, and you know this as a Kent State grad, as a MAC school grad, the MACtion games in late October and November, they're all on Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night. Yeah, you're not going to be playing for a national title, but you're going to be on national television. You're going to be exposed. You have a big game on national TV. That's what you're going to get. Sorry, John, the counter is reset to 1. I apologize, guys. I've missed 2 shows out of 97. I do sincerely apologize. But that's what it's going to be. I think Travis Hunter sees that Florida State's potential is there. I think this Florida State team will be better than they were last season and the year before. I do seriously believe that. That's not just the fandom talking. I believe they will be better. And I think he wants to be part of that. And he sees that as bad as Florida State was last season, they will have plenty of chances for him to play early and often. He's going to play defensive back in a secondary that, aside from Asante Samuel, was god-awful. How's Miami's basketball team, Dennis? Oh, that's right. They're not in the tournament. Not in the NIT, not in the CBI, not even in the sucky tournament. No, yeah, they're not good. Sorry, Dennis.
In the process of trying to strategize when I would release certain spring training or spring practice, I should say, stay out of the baseball lingo, Mark, spring practice videos for college football teams, I checked on a few basketball situations for specific schools to say, well, if they're heavily involved in March Madness, I'll wait. Or if they're awful and they're done after their conference tournament, their fan base is, of course, going to focus toward football. In the course of doing that, I came up upon what you just noted, that Miami finished 13th in the ACC. They were awful.
They were.
And also I came across this gem, which is completely unrelated, that Iowa State went 0-18 in the Big 12 this year in basketball.
But they won the Fiesta Bowl.
They won the Fiesta Bowl.
Brock Purdy. Shout out to Brock Purdy and the Purdy family.
In basketball. So then I felt liberated to release Iowa State material thinking, yeah, the basketball fan base isn't really locked in, I'm sure, for this 0-18 team.
I'd like to point out to the viewers at home that throughout the last 3 months, I've been trying to push for more basketball talk because our basketball team did win more than 3 games this season. And Mark has said, no, we are a football show, we're a football show. And this is now twice that Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, has brought up basketball. I've never been prouder, Mark. I am so proud of you right now. I am proud. Underneath my Broward County Seminole Club shirt is a heart that is proud for you right now.
I made a commitment. I made a promise to you at some point that from the time that the NCAA tournament started, or NCAA tournament week, which is this week, for as long as Florida State stays active, that we could devote 10 or 15 minutes to Florida State basketball talk.
We're not going to give the viewers 10 minutes. Viewers, I promise you we will not talk 10 minutes about college basketball. I can't talk 10 minutes about college basketball. I agree with John. I love college football. Let's talk FCS. Jackson State. Shout out Deion Sanders. Kicking butt there for Jackson State.
Are they?
Yeah, they're dominant.
I haven't paid any attention to that either.
Mark, where have you been?
Covering spring football and all the various storylines that exist.
This is spring football. These games count. Get your exciting SWAC action together.
Logan, where are you? You can come in here and talk some spring football. Get us updated. Probably bring some video with him.
Put down the whiskey, Logan. Put down the whiskey and log in.
For all the folks that are watching, this is your perfect opportunity to serve up questions, comments, debate topics, a little trash talking for Jason and I, because what happens every week is we get a load of questions. We only can get to a few of them. And Jason and Logan and everybody gets on a roll discussing whatever. And we barely dip into the questions. And this is the perfect time for you to produce the show. Be a Jason Parker level producer tonight and produce Florida State Seminoles Live. You
want to be better. Strive to be a little bit better than Jason Parker. Jason Parker just nails it in about halfway through his day. The rest of the staff comes in.
All right. All right.
I'm glad to see Dennis Wilson is back. Dennis Wilson, we missed your trash talking about Miami. It's good to once again have trash talk from Miami fans who don't know what the hell they're talking about. It's good to have you back, Dennis. Welcome back. We missed you, buddy. We were too busy with Ronan, who sometimes knows what he's talking about. You know, a couple of Miami guys who do know what they're talking about. But Dennis, your sheer idiocy as a Miami fan is what we've been missing. We missed you, buddy.
Now, Jason, some of the conversation last week stemmed around the news that Mackenzie Milton will be unleashed for spring practice. Now, we know, of course, quarterbacks are not to be touched, which makes total sense, but that at least he would be involved in all the drills and all the reps.
Yeah, and I think it's good. You know, we talk, all kidding aside, and I stand by my position that my worry about him is his mobility. He has not played in a college football game since November 2018. That's just a fact. He's going to be going up in his first game against a Notre Dame team that was one of the 4 teams left standing in the college football playoff. Also a fact. It's not going to be the same Notre Dame team that we played last year, the same Notre Dame team that made that playoff, but it's going to be a very good Notre Dame team. That's my worry. What I want to see in the spring game is he needs to give fans that confidence. He needs to give them that swagger. He needs to connect on the deep ball. He needs to make connections with the receivers. He needs to make connections basically showing that he can run that offense, both the way that Norvell, the way that Kenny Dillingham, they want to run that offense, and basically give some confidence. I think Jordan Travis is a very good player. I'm happy that Jordan Travis was our starting quarterback for over half the season. I liked him. I think that you need to see Milton's arm. We need to see Milton's arm. The mobility is something we can talk about later on as we get closer to the actual regular season. You're not going to see anything in the spring game. They don't want another Dan Kendra episode, what happened during the 98 spring game. You just need to see his arm. He needs to give you that confidence, that hope that things are going to be better. Because remember, Florida State hasn't had a spring game since Willie Taggart was the head coach. Norvell's spring game got canceled last year due to COVID. So that's what we need right there. So I think it's a good move. My concern with that is I'm going to be concerned with him every single time somebody runs after him. Whether it's a Florida State player in practice, even though they can't tackle him, or coming up that first game against Notre Dame. I think that first game against Notre Dame, you're going to have collective breath holding until he takes that first hit.
Our man, DeAndre, BGPO Football Funk, Clemson fan, Super Chat contribution. Thank you so much, DeAndre. You know that we appreciate that. From 1977 to 1991, which I've got a pretty good grip on, both for Clemson and Florida State, as does Jason, was Clemson a better football program than FSU? I would say yes. Well, the Florida State football program was much different in 1977 than it was in 1991. So you can't really group that together. For FSU in particular, you're talking about, as Jason has outlined many times, Bobby Bowden taking one of the worst programs in the nation and completely resurrecting it within 3 to 4 years, in which they're participating in Orange Bowls in 1979 and 1980 as a top 5 team in the nation after being dismal, winless just years earlier. And then, of course, quickly became a power. And pretty much by, in the early 80s, they weren't great, but they were really good. They were winning. There were a lot of 8-4 kind of campaigns in the early 80s, and then they hit their stride. 87, they had a great season. Dion showed up. They really took off after that. And then, of course, went on the most historic run in the history of college football for having top 4 finishes.
Clemson benefited by the same thing that Florida State benefited when Florida State won the first 9 ACC titles in their first 9 seasons. The ACC was god-awful. As a football conference, the ACC was god-awful pathetic. You could argue from 1970 to probably, I'd say 2000, that 30-year period, there was a god-awful football conference. Florida State was brought in to help bring up the football of the conference, and we knew full well we were going to get our butts kicked in basketball, which is exactly what happened, but we were going to bring up the conference in football. And I think that Clemson has always been a good program. Don't want to take anything away from Clemson, but they have also benefited by knowing that they had to step up their recruiting game, step up their facility game, to compete with the Florida State dynasty that came into the ACC. And Clemson has done it. Dabo Swinney has done it. The Clemson administration has done it. But they knew full well that the reason they had to do it was because from 1992 to 2002, they were getting their butt kicked on a yearly basis by Florida State.
Clemson, of course, won a national championship under Danny Ford in 1981. They beat Nebraska in the Orange Bowl that year. DeAndre, for whatever reason, is selected 1977 as a starting point. Clemson went 8-3-1 and lost the Gator Bowl that year to what would have been Hugh Green and company. 1 year after Tony Dorsett won the Heisman Trophy, Clemson beat Ohio State in the Gator Bowl the next year to go 11-1. They had an 8-4 season the next year.
They got your coach fired from Ohio State.
In a bowl game. We're not going to go through the entire history of year to year of Clemson's 15-year run there from 1977 to 91, but they weren't a serious contender for a national championship other than the year that they actually won it. But they were generally a top 15 to 20 program.
Are you still mad at them because they were one of the reasons that Woody Hayes got fired? Woody Hayes punching a Clemson player. Clemson brought out Woody Hayes' anger. That's how evil Clemson is. He saw that orange and he just said, I can't deal with this. It's like me when I see Gator orange.
Ohio State football at that point couldn't believe that it was losing to Clemson.
I couldn't believe you were losing to Clemson. I wasn't even born yet. I still couldn't believe you were losing.
But that was a 1-loss Clemson team. That was a 4-loss Ohio State team. So it was because of your status as a football program. Even having a 7-4 season, you get elevated to the Gator Bowl playing a 10-1 team. So they were kind of playing out of their league in a sense, and it was still a 17-15 game.
Well, and that goes along with what we've talked about, and James Coleman has said this multiple times on several different occasions on your show. Florida State should expect to be an 8-win team. Anything less than 8 wins should be a disappointment for Florida State because of our past. But everyone's still living in that dynasty area. Everyone's still living in that 29-game win streak in the earlier part of last decade. This is not an 8-win team right now. That's why we need to be realistic. Is this team right now a 7-5 team? Yeah, I would take 7-5. Hell, I'd take 6-6 and be bowl eligible at this point. Do I want us to be 8-4, 9-3? Absolutely. Do I want us to at least beat Miami or Florida, one or the other, if not both? Absolutely. Do I want us to look competitive against Clemson? Absolutely. But we need to be realistic with who we are. This is not the same Florida State team. Please tell me how Maryland and North Carolina were good in the 80s.
They were good at times, but overall they weren't that good. Maryland had the Boomer Esiason run there in 84, 85. In that stretch, they were pretty good.
And North
Carolina,
were good. And North Carolina had Lawrence Taylor. That's it. But they had good players, but they weren't good teams.
Lawrence Taylor was out of there by 80.
81, he was drafted.
Yeah, 81 was his first year with the Giants. Yep.
Well, that's what I said. So, but they had good players, but they weren't a part of good teams. You could say Cam Akers was a very good player for Florida State, but wasn't a part of good teams. You could make that argument.
If we are talking about the 1980s, I got the historical directory pulled up right here.
BG was 77 to 91. So we're going back to 77 to 91.
And people that watch me on a regular basis know that I take a lot of pride in remembering all bowl scores and scores of everybody, but I'm just not going to put that kind of strain on my brain right now. We're going to go straight to the, my goodness, 1977 was a long time ago. So we're getting there, 79. Okay, let's start. Maryland football. Here's the run from 77 to 91. 8-4, won the Hall of Fame Classic against Minnesota. Wow. Then they went 9-3, and they lost the Sun Bowl to Texas 42-0.
Wow.
So these records might be puffed up, to Jason's point, by a weak ACC when they go to a Sun Bowl against Texas and lose 42-0 after going 8-3. 7-4 the next year. Must not have gone to a bowl game. They did not. Then they went 8-4, and they lost to Florida 35-20 in the Tangerine Bowl. And then we move on to 1981, and we've got a 4-6-1 record. Then we've got 8-4 with a loss to Washington in the Aloha Bowl. I remember that, 21-20. That was a game late night on ESPN. I remember that one.
Classic college football.
1983, we've got a Tennessee loss in the Citrus Bowl, 30-23, to conclude an 8-4 season. A lot of 8-4s here. This is Boomer Esiason territory here. Then the next year, they played Tennessee again in a bowl game, rematch in a bowl game, back-to-back. This time, they beat Tennessee 28-27 in the Sun Bowl to finish 9-3. Then they went 9-3 again in 85. They beat Syracuse in the Cherry Bowl, 35-18.
Where the hell was the Cherry Bowl?
The now defunct Cherry Bowl. It was at the Silver Dome in Pontiac. I don't know what cherries have to do with Detroit, Michigan.
Michigan, isn't that Cherry State or something?
Do they?
I think it's cherries. I'm from Miami, Florida.
1986, Maryland at 5-5-1. Of course, we're still in the era of the tie. 1987, Maryland at 4-7. Then they went 5-6. So this was pretty much after the Boomer Esiason, where they were good. Yeah, 3-7-1, 6-5-1, 2-9 in 1991. So basically, Boomer Esiason was great. I'm not putting him completely responsible for the Maryland winning ways, but he was, of course, the marquee player during much of that time, about 3 years, and then they drifted off into obscurity.
No, but if you look at it during that time period, And I'm just going to pull this up real quick. ACC football champions. If you look at that time, Clemson was the dominating force at the time. If you look at, let's look at the list of champions real quick. So Clemson won in 78. It was North Carolina in 77 and in 1980. Clemson in 78. NC State in 79. Clemson 81, 82, 86, 87, 88. Maryland won it in 83, 84, 85. And then Duke and Virginia split it in 89. And then Clemson won it in 91 before Florida State wins 9 straight championships. So Clemson, for a majority of the time, was the best team. So that's why I'm saying Clemson was Florida State before Florida State. They were the dominant team in a weaker conference. How would you feel about UCF joining the ACC?
This is I'll set this one up here. First of all, I've got to acknowledge, of course, we have to acknowledge a tremendous Super Chat contribution from Khalil Young. Thank you so much for that. That's much, much appreciated. Thank you so much. And I think this is a fascinating topic, actually, because I realigned the conferences a couple years ago and shot videos and posted with UCF actually realigned in the ACC. So I'll serve this one up for you, Jason. How do you feel about UCF joining the ACC? I think it would be good for both parties and ultimately make the conference more competitive. Florida State, Virginia Tech, Clemson have been the best, but even Virginia Tech has dropped off. UNC and Miami are improving.
I would say this. I've said for a while that, using for another conference as an example, that the Big 12 would have been smart to come in and poach either USF or UCF because you get the Florida market. You get the Orlando, I'm saying this from a TV side. Tampa is the 12th market, 12th rate, number 12 as far as DMAs, as far as market size. Orlando's 20th. So either way, you get a top 20 TV market to bring in. You get the state of Florida recruiting. From the ACC, I don't think the ACC thinks the UCF move would be sexy enough because of the fact that you already have Miami and Tallahassee. Tallahassee not being obviously a big TV market, but the large amount of Florida State fans down here in the city of Tampa, you've got those markets in there, and the city of Atlanta, which has Florida State fans, Florida State alumni, and a lot of Georgia Tech, obviously. That's why I don't think UCF would be sexy from the media side as far as from the money side, because they're not really needed. Orlando is not really a needed market. That being said, from a football side, I would trade UCF for Louisville. If you want a better football conference, you make that move. Send Louisville, let Louisville go, join West Virginia over in the Big 12. They would at least be closer. You'd have Louisville, Iowa State, Louisville, West Virginia, a little bit closer games. You could break them up into divisions and then bring UCF in. UCF would play Florida State. UCF would play Clemson. I think it would do two things because, A, it would force Florida State and force some of the other programs in the Atlantic Division to get better because UCF is a very good team right now, number one. Number two, I think it would knock UCF down a notch because UCF would get killed by Clemson. I think UCF more likely than not would get beat by Florida State. I think Florida and UCF they would lose a couple more of those games. They would lose to the Miamis. They would lose to the North Carolinas right now. I think UCF would be a good 8-4 team, maybe 9-3 in a good year in the ACC. So I think they would help make everyone get better, but I don't see the ACC going after them. I think it would be a smart move football-wise, but other than that, I don't see it happening.
So I'm strictly thinking football. I'm not thinking the other sports. So if the move by the ACC was being made in concert with the Big 12, as you suggest, that would, because West Virginia is 1,500 miles from anybody in the Big 12. Iowa State's like their closest rival, which is a joke. So West Virginia is just hanging out by itself in the Big 12. Yes, you pair them up with Louisville, it makes it a little bit more legitimate geographically. On the football side, though, even though the Atlantic Coast Conference by name doesn't specify North versus South, it's always been more of a Southern conference traditionally than a Northern conference. Therefore, the fit for UCF above, let's say, a Syracuse, that would be my school to choose from a football standpoint. Of course, the basketball is much stronger to boot out of the conference.
It would also allow it would allow the ACC probably to break it up more into if they want to do a north-south, because we've talked about this for years when they broke up into the Atlantic Division, the Coastal Division, and you've got Boston College and Syracuse in with Florida State, Clemson, At the time, it was Maryland. Now it's Louisville. You know, and then you got NC State, Wake Forest in one, but then Duke and North Carolina in the other. And that's why they won't split it up, because if you do north-south, you would be splitting up. It'd be 3 North Carolina schools in one and one of them in the other. They either wanted to do all 4 in one or do 2 and 2, which is what they have right now. UCF allows you a little bit more leverage when you're training in a northern school for a southern school. You could move some things around. You could do east-west, north-south, however you wanted to do that. I just don't see them doing it because, let's be honest, the ACC has not made football their top priority. Basketball is always going to be the ACC's top priority. Just like Big Game James showing up 30 minutes late is going to be his priority because he's out coaching the youth of America, or at least the youth in Duval County. James Coleman, how the hell are you, buddy?
Doing good. My bad, man. It's the championship team. We got to get practice, man. We not like Miami. We about trophies over here. So we forgot all about it. We practice went a little over. We had to do some gassers because the 7-year-olds wasn't listening well enough.
But it was a good practice today. You had good drills today.
Yeah, you know, once everybody got on the same page, but we got it going. So how y'all doing, man? I'm sorry about being late.
Doing good.
Doing well.
James, maybe you
Good
can.
to see you.
James Khalil Young, once again, Khalil, thank you for the $49.99 contribution. We do appreciate it. But Mark and I were just talking about it. He says, how would you feel about UCF joining the ACC? What are your thoughts on any? Would you like to see that? Or who would you like to get rid of to get them in? What are your thoughts?
I wouldn't mind it. I think it would humble them more than what they believe. They had an amazing run when it came to the national championship that they had. They had an amazing run, and I think Gus Malzahn is a good coach, but I think they'll learn that it's different when you actually have to go up against Power 5 competition every day. It's not a bunch of guys who, like, you know, UCF gets the benefit of having, you know, guys in the state of Florida who didn't go to Florida, didn't go to Florida State, didn't go to Miami. So they can still get some top talented 3-stars where, Tulsa doesn't always have that benefit. Cincinnati is starting to get that benefit, but they've got a coach who won't be there that much longer. So, like, if you've got a game plan for Miami one week, FSU the next week, and then somebody else the next week, it's not like when you play a good team in the beginning of the season and then another one in a bowl game where you got 30 days to plan for it. It's a lot. It's real. So I think that's the only knock I think they'll have, but I believe they could be just as good as a Wake Forest.
James, have you had a chance to see the new commitment from Fort Lauderdale, Devon Mortimer? He's a wide receiver.
From Dillard?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes. Extremely explosive. Very fast. Dillard's got some talent down there. I know I have a couple good friends who are affiliated with the program. I actually talked with their coach about some strength conditioning coach stuff for the off season. So I mean, they've got some guys. Like I'll take a guy like that. And you know, I think a lot of Florida State fans love to use this. I take a 3-star with heart, and I don't want a 3-star with heart. I want a 3-star from Miami, or a 3-star from Florida. If you're going to give me one that I don't know of, but like when you watch his film as a kick returner, you just see he's a game changer. And I believe that when he goes and he has the season that he needs to have, he'll probably see his ranking change. But yeah, that's a signing that I actually I do enjoy. I'm glad we got that kid. Side note, though, Miami's going to have just to give Miami fans some love. They're about to get a big time commitment here in the next week.
No, we don't give Miami fans love. No, it's not what we do around here. We hate on them. But you know what else we do? We also tell people to hit the like button. I can't tell you how many people hit the like button, but Logan's busy getting drunk, so I guess I got to play the role of Logan right now. So maybe Mark can tell me how many people hit the like button. Just hit the like button. We need it. If you hit the like button, an angel gets its wings. So hit the like button. Puppy gets adopted. Not by one of us, but a puppy will get adopted.
Do you guys know anything about this new ACC commissioner?
I'm going to be honest with you, no. Can't be worse than the last one.
We don't need to talk about it then. I was just curious because somebody mentioned the new commissioner in the ACC.
Yeah, James Phillips.
Have you guys talked about how Jordan Travis is really amazing coaches and pushing Mackenzie Milton? And now the narrative's changing. Like James Coleman, I told you guys that Jordan Travis isn't as bad as what you think. And maybe coaches really like him.
While you were busy making 7-year-olds run gassers, I was giving you credit about saying that, about you talking about Jordan Travis. Now, here's my question to you. You've said this in previous weeks about how Jordan Travis may be higher up on the depth chart, maybe higher up in the opinion chart than people are giving him credit for. Where is that coming from, and what do you think he needs to do in the spring to actually make it a legitimate battle between him and Mackenzie Milton?
I can't tell you exactly where it's coming from.
You don't give me the source, but
because that would like make things messed up. But it put it like this: it's coming from the inside. Mm-hmm. Is what I would. I'm gonna be honest with you. I would have thought the exact same thing as everybody else is thinking, based upon what you saw last season, based upon what you saw them put on Jordan Travis and the hype that came with Mackenzie Milton. But when I'm saying this, I got in the confidence that I said it with. I promise you, it's not from anything that I saw last year. I think it's just the coaching staff knows that or feels like they didn't give that team all the tools to succeed for whatever reason, COVID, admin, whatever. And now they feel like, well, what they want to do, he does have the tools to be able to succeed and be able to help them win some games. Plus, I think there's a lot of honor in the fact that if he hadn't played, Florida State could be defeated. The 3 games they won, he was the starting quarterback. So, and again, they hadn't seen Mackenzie Milton throw until the first spring practice, which is why I joke around and say like a lot of this reporting has been criminal and like very a lot of lack of integrity with it. I mean, because they know, it's tour duty drills. There's no ball. The NCAA prevents that. So like they know that those coaches have seen them. And it was a leap of faith, and it's okay to like Mackenzie Milton, but just it's not as cut and dry as what people make it seem. I know everybody wants it to be one way or the other, but there's more nuance in a lot of the things that go on. And typically with Florida State, it's always a lot more nuanced than what other people are. I wish it was less cut and dry.
James, I'm gonna call you out on all of this. I'm not calling you out because I think you're wrong. I'm gonna give you a chance to express your feelings and your emotions. For those of you who follow Big Game James on social media on Twitter, James was a little opinionated about fans purchasing tickets to the spring game, April 10th, at 5 o'clock inside Doak Campbell. And I said to him, James came in a little hot. But James, explain where your passion comes from, because you were really adamant about fans getting out there, being inside Doak Campbell to support it. Explain your frustration with some of the fan base.
It's not a frustration. I was really just being petty. And what it is that fans, like, I'm critical. And I'm going to be critical because I earned that right. So anytime that you're critical of Florida State, they say you must love Willie Taggart and you should go root for FAU. And this is by a bunch of people who live on the internet who've never been inside of Doak Campbell Stadium. Mm-hmm. And my thing is, all that energy, all that fake false bravado that you were putting up, your AWS better be inside that spring game. Or go root for FAU. Like, I don't want to hear about how much you love the program. Show it. Show it fiscally. Show it physically. If not, all you're doing is a bunch of capping, as the young people call it. So that was what I was saying. Like, I'm putting 100 kids in Doak Campbell. So like I know where the money where money is coming from on my part. So I say whatever the hell it is I want to say about my university, because not only did I play there, but I also put butts in seats. So it should be 10,000 people there. Strong. I hope for Mike Norvell's first spring, since I love him so much. Yeah. I actually like Mike, so like that's why I'll be there.
Yeah, I know people are going to be coming up from South Florida for a spring football game. I know it's going to be there. Why you got to continue to hate on FAU, man? Why can't you hate on FIU, man? They're coached by Butch Davis. Give Willie a break. Stop hating on the Owls, man.
I mean, listen, Willie has the largest finesse in the state of Florida history. I love it. I have no quarrels with Willie Taggart. mine was really just more so is that's what fans are saying with dumb retorts. So I figured, like I say every now and then, do I sound as stupid as y'all sound when I say that? So like I'm trying to show people how dumb they sound when they say things, like for people to become Seminole boosters, buy tickets, come fill the stadium. It's $10. If you can't afford a $10 ticket, let me know. I'll make sure you can get a $10 ticket. You're not gonna sit with me, but I'll make sure you get a $10 ticket because y'all again, it's claims of loving and all this other stuff. And I personally, I think I said this on the show before. Spring games is nothing but kindergarten graduation or Easter speeches. Like it's really dumb and redundant. You're not going to see anything, but it's a free chance to get inside the stadium.
Where was this offer to buy tickets before I paid money for mine? I could have gotten free tickets from James. What the hell? It's bogus.
When the Voice of College Football budget expands, when we blow up here, possibly maybe by next year, then I'm taking trips for spring games. I come down to Tallahassee. We do all sorts of shows. We'll see.
We could do road shows. We can make this happen. It's not that expensive in Tallahassee. Trust me. You bring $20, you'll be fine.
I think I can swing that.
It's really not that expensive.
BGPO Football Funk, our Clemson buddy, DeAndre. The only connection I can make here would be recruiting. So with James leaving us temporarily, hopefully, we'll leave this one to myself and Jason in regards to the rise of LSU. That would have been under Nick Saban, who took over the program in 2000. Did that hurt Florida State in the 2000s? And again, the connection I'm making is that Florida State took a lot of players from Louisiana.
I mean, big names would be like Warwick Dunn, obviously being from Baton Rouge, Travis Minor, running backs from Baton Rouge, Tolman Gardner, big-time wide receiver who was from, I want to say, New Orleans. They got a couple other guys from the New Orleans area in that time in the mid to late 90s. I think LSU's rise probably affected more of the SEC. It forced other schools like Alabama, forced other schools like Ole Miss, Mississippi State to kind of have to improve their game a little bit, and some did, like Alabama. Some didn't, like Ole Miss, and got to the point for the rest of the 2000s where they were. I think Florida State's problem, and as James comes back here, I'll say this:
I think we all
there was that little decline, and I think James can attest this a little bit more because it started a little bit during his time where there were guys who came in kind of expecting, okay, I'm going to come into Florida State, I'm just going to go through the motions, we're going to be a top 5 program every single year because we've done it for 14 seasons, and not wanting to put in that work. And that's something I will give Jimbo Fisher credit for. When Jimbo Fisher came in the early part of the 2010s, was saying, if you want to get back to this point, you're going to have to put in that work. You're going to have to do this. And it kind of went a little bit downhill. And after James left after the 2005 season was the last time they won the ACC again until 2012. So there was that last 4 years of what the hell is happening to this team.
And if James is ever able to make it back in, we will tee him up with that question. Otherwise, Jason, we've got another broad scope, big picture question coming in from Khalil Young. Appreciate that so much, Khalil, your contribution to the channel. Thank you so much for that. Who do you guys think is the second best conference in college football? We know that the SEC is the best, slightly overrated in his opinion, but the rest of the conferences have been up and down for a while. I'd say the ACC or the Big Ten.
I would say probably if I had to rank them, I'd probably say SEC 1 right now. Based off last season entering this year, I'd probably say SEC 1. I'd say Big Ten is number 2. I think not just because of what Ohio State did, being able to play Alabama in the championship game, but I think as a conference as a whole. Right now, if you say, let's say, who's the best team right now in the Big Ten? You watched more than this year, Mark. Would you say Ohio State was the best team last year in the Big Ten?
Yeah, it's not even close. So Ohio State has been for about 15 years.
Who was second best team in the Big Ten last season?
The second best team in the Big Ten was very close between Indiana and Northwestern.
Okay, so what would you say? Pick one.
I'm going to go Northwestern.
Okay, so you'll say Northwestern. So let's take Notre Dame out of the ACC because that was a one-year thing. Let's say Clemson was the best team last year in the ACC. They were absolutely best team in the ACC. Who would you say was number 2, not including Notre Dame? You say North Carolina, probably?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think, who'd you say the Big Ten, Indiana or Northwestern?
Northwestern.
So it's Northwestern. I think Northwestern beats North Carolina, even with Sam Howell quarterback. And I think after that, there's such a deep decline after that because, for example, using Miami. This is a Miami team that beat the hell out of Florida State. This is a Miami team that beat the hell out of almost every team they played and then got annihilated by North Carolina and then had to beat Virginia Tech in the fourth quarter. They were a hot and cold Miami team. So I think there's that deep decline versus the Big Ten, which I think is a little bit more even, a little bit more stacked up at the top. I'd say the ACC has a potential to be number 3 right now, and I also say that because I think the Pac-12 and the Big 12 are just so far down right now that I think the ACC is solidly at 3rd. I think the ACC has a chance to be the second best conference, but it's going to depend on Florida State getting better or playing up to their standards. It's going to depend on Miami, and we'll talk about this as it goes on. Miami realistically could be the wild card in the ACC this season because outside of the first game of the season against Alabama in Atlanta and outside of their road game against North Carolina, they should be the favorite in all of their 10 games. They should, on paper, be at worst a 10-2 team. And if they can go to North Carolina, they could be an 11-1 team fighting for a playoff berth. That being said, the way Miami has played over the last 5 or 6 seasons, this is also a team that could end up being 8-4, depending on which Miami team shows up. So that's where the ACC has to improve themselves, is being more of a consistent conference. It can't just be about Clemson. North Carolina needs to be a 10-win team. Miami has to be a 10-win team this upcoming season. Florida State needs to be an 8-win or better team for the ACC to be even in the conversation of being the second best conference.
My thoughts on this one, Khalil, is first and foremost, every offseason I rank the conferences, and I don't do it based on my opinion. What I do is I take all the games played between the Power 5 conferences, and I go through a metric in which I rate the conferences, I seed all the conferences, and then I give certain weights to the games. So if the first place team in the Big Ten beats the last place team in the ACC, that's only given so much weight because that should happen, as opposed to the best team in the Big Ten beating the best team in the ACC. Anyway, there's a complete metric there. But there were no non-conference games during the regular season between the Power 5, so I did not go through the exercise this year. To answer your question, I believe that the SEC, like you, is the best conference. I don't think there's any question about it. But I do believe that it is slightly overrated, that there's not quite the gap that many people believe between the SEC and the rest of the nation. To Jason's point, and I'm going to take it a bit further back than 2020 because I think that the season was a bit compromised and a bit of an aberration, that what the Big Ten has that the ACC does not have is over the last 5 years or so, there's been a layer of Penn State, Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa on a second tier, especially those first 3 schools. You know, Penn State has finished in the top 10 in the nation 3 out of the last 4 years and won major bowl games. Michigan, the same thing. Wisconsin, the same thing, finishing in the top 10 to 12 in the nation, going to major bowl games. The ACC has not had that since Florida State has dropped off the cliff. They've not had that second tier, and that's been the difference between, in my eyes, the 2 conferences looking at the Big Ten and the ACC. But again, to Jason's point, I think this is a good one. The ACC has a great potential to be the second best conference in America because of the recruiting footprint.
I think
James, go ahead, Jason.
No, I was just going to say, I think the ACC can go back and say, using, for example, the 2016 season, you could argue that the SEC was probably still the number 1 conference, but remember, that was the year Clemson won the national title. That was the year Florida State beat a Michigan team in the Orange Bowl. Louisville had a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. That was probably the last season that you could argue the ACC could have been in the conversation.
Absolutely.
For second place. Because after that, it was, Miami was playing Clemson in the ACC championship in 2017. But remember, that was a Miami team that barely beat us with 6 seconds to go, barely beat North Carolina, lost to Pitt in the final game of the season. So that's where you start to see that steady decline. So this is going to be the question for the ACC. Can the lower teams, the second-tier teams, the Miami's, Florida States, North Carolinas, not necessarily overthrow Clemson, but compete with Clemson?
Before we cut James loose, in 2016, I went through that same analysis, And even though I believed based on my eyeballs that the SEC was still the best conference, that it brings in the best talent at the front end of the career, and then 3 to 4 years later, we see it in the NFL draft, they're producing the best players in mass, that I believed in 2016 based on the results on the field. If you just looked at the results on the field, which is what should matter, the ACC played the best football of any conference in America in 2016. 10-3 in postseason play, national champs, an Orange Bowl champ, played the best regular season against the other 4 conferences. But I still thought the SEC was the best. But objectively, the ACC was the best in 2016, and there's been a slide off since. But again, because of where the schools are located, especially the southern schools, I think there's an opportunity for the ACC to quickly become the second best conference.
And
What do you think, James?
Oh, sorry. Can I just, before we do
Yep.
James, that's what the biggest problem that the ACC ever made, the biggest mistake the ACC ever made was not getting a deal with NBC. And I'm not just saying that because I'm an NBC employee. I've talked to various people in the NBC family who've said when Notre Dame joined the ACC, when Notre Dame came in every other sport but football, the decision was going to be made, okay, you don't have to join us in football, but we want in on the NBC contract. That's one of the things the SEC was smart about. The SEC signing the deal with CBS meant they didn't have to compete with the Big Ten. They didn't have to compete with the Big 12 or the Pac-12 for ABC's eyes or now Fox's eyes. They were on their own with CBS. You could have had Florida State Clemson nationally televised every year on NBC. Florida State Miami when that game was still one of the better games. You know, the Clemson Notre Dame game like last year. All these games would have been nationally televised. You would have had that exposure of essentially having your own network that 7 of the 13 weekends, you'd have a Notre Dame game. You'd have a doubleheader action with Notre Dame football and an ACC game. So that's half the season right there. But half the season, you would have your own network. And that's where the ACC screwed up because the ACC has been in bed with ESPN too long, and it's going to kill them. That's why the ACC network took forever to get on, and I'm sorry, it's still not on Comcast. Comcast is the leading cable provider in the country, and it still doesn't have the ACC network.
Second best conference, James.
Big Ten. Easy to say that. After that, after you get to the third, it's kind of like, yeah.
Uh-oh.
James.
We want to hear from James. So hopefully we can get him back.
Folks, James has done a lot of good things for us. He's done a lot of good things for the community in Jacksonville and Tallahassee.
But
Let's get him a better phone. We're going to start a GoFundMe for James's phone or James's phone plan. We're going to hook him up.
I actually have the most incentive to start the GoFundMe.
I was trying to get it to a better place, man. I was trying to get to a better place. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
As soon as we think we've got you, though,
no here. Okay,
something happens.
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, it just does that little weird thing. But I got a full Wi-Fi thing. I'm sitting on my front porch now, but whatever. Here's the thing: is that Alabama is the best team in the nation consistently. I don't really know if, like, number 2. I give SEC 2 teams a year, but 3 on down. I'm not 100% sure if their 3 on down isn't as bad or better than everybody else's 3 on down. I guess you could use the bowl game stuff, but on any given day, consistent scenario, I'm not 1,000% sure. Ohio State can compete with Bama, might not beat them, but I just have this feeling that almost every conference has 1 to 2 teams that can compete with anybody in the nation. After that, those other teams don't really matter. Florida had a great year this year, but did anybody really think that Florida could go beat Ohio?
I'll fill in what I think.
Clemson is the only team that people consistently, and then before that was Florida State that people can. Shucks. Basically, what I'm saying is embellish this conference stuff and who's great and who's not. Bama's great, Clemson's great, Ohio State's great. Nobody cares about the Pac-12, and Oklahoma can be good enough just to get their teeth kicked in by everybody else. So, like, that's the reality of it. SEC does play a different brand of football that's more conducive to the NFL right now. But as I tell people, the NFL and college, same game, different sport, if that makes sense. But I will say, if you ask me, I would say the SEC, Big Ten, and then probably the ACC after that.
James, question for you: which team, we've talked about this, Clemson obviously being the clear number one right now in the ACC. Out of the second tier, let's say it's North Carolina, Miami, and for the sake of not being a homer, we'll say, I really don't even know who a third team would be in that second tier. Virginia Tech? Who would you say, Mark?
No, Virginia Tech's trash too.
But who else? It's not us. So let's just say, okay, so North Carolina and Miami. Let's say those are the second tier teams right now. Which team, I guess you would say, which team's success matters the most to the ACC at this point? Is it North Carolina with Sam Howell, who could be a Heisman Trophy winner? Is it Miami? We saw what happened in 2017 when they were at one point the number 2 team in the country. Which one does the ACC want more to compete with Clemson? I think I know the answer, but
Miami.
You and Miami are the 2 most important programs in the conference.
When they expanded the conference, and I remember when they talked about it because I was there.
I remember. I interviewed you.
It was supposed to be Florida State and Miami rematch, or at worst, Virginia Tech in the ACC championship every year, because those were the 2 bases that would do numbers. Clemson was I know Clemson fans love to brag right now, and I guess it helps you. And you're hot right now, but the only time we really considered you were Coach Bobby's son's team. So that's just the reality when I was there. So, and he had to keep his son employed a couple times, so he hooked him up. But nobody was really looking at Clemson as far, especially from a TV revenue. Let's be honest. Outside of recently, if you go to Texas and you wore orange or purple, people will look at you like you're crazy. But if you go to Texas, you wear garnet and gold, they're going to automatically assume what that is. Same thing if you wear orange and green, they're going to automatically assume what that is. If you say what a Hokie is, they're going to think you're weird. But then you say Michael Vick, they're going to automatically know what it is. That's what the fact that those schools did not hold up their end of the bargain for the first 10 years is the reason why the ACC is where it's at now, from a revenue standpoint and all those things. And that's the messed up part, because you have, when they brought in Syracuse, you got the New York market. You have so many major markets covered that the SEC doesn't have, but your brand of football, because the big dogs aren't winning. And that's also on the commissioners for not putting the big dogs in a better position to eat. But one thing I'll give the SEC credit for is Alabama gets whatever the hell Alabama wants. If Nick Saban came out tomorrow and said, I want to pay players, guess what the SEC is doing? They're paying players. Because they're going to do whatever Alabama needs to be done, because they're the big dogs and they're the premier program there. The ACC is a basketball conference, so they just care about Duke and North Carolina. Right now, it's making them sick that Duke and North Carolina are trash.
And to your point, James, in the Big Ten, when there was a rule in place by the Big Ten during this COVID season on who would make the Big Ten championship game, and Ohio State didn't qualify under those rules, they changed their rule.
They changed the rules.
Well, and James, just to hit the nail on the head, when James said this, when they brought Syracuse in, then everyone goes, Syracuse in the ACC, what the hell is this all about? It's because you had the New York market, the New York TV market, the number 1 TV market in the country, all of a sudden came to the ACC. You have Boston, which I believe is 3 or 4 right now. Boston's 5. Philly is 4. You have Chicago essentially with Notre Dame and the way they've come in of late.
You got the Atlanta market.
Atlanta, DC, Miami. You have all the Florida markets. You have Charlotte, which is an up-and-coming market. You have all these markets that are coming in here. On paper, the ACC should be dominating every week. And I go back to saying it. They should be on their own network. And I'm not just saying whether it was NBC, Fox. If once the SEC leaves CBS, if the ACC wants to go to CBS, by God, get on your own network. That's what James Phillips, his number 1 mission should be, okay, appease ESPN, because the ACC network is in bed with ESPN. That's how it's founded. Just like the SEC network is through ESPN. You keep that going. You have to get on your own network. You have all these markets. You have all these fan bases. If Miami's on the up, if Florida State has a 7-5, 8-4 season this year and starts to appear back up, you've got next season when Florida State plays LSU. You've got Miami playing future games against Alabama. You've got all these games going on, and you're going to be on with 3 other networks on ABC and on ESPN right now. That can't work.
Well, I'll say this concerning everything you just said is true, but there is a consideration for these professional sports towns. Like Boston doesn't care that much about Boston College. They're an afterthought. They care about the Patriots and the Celtics and the Red Sox and the Bruins. And I listen to New York radio. I'm 2 hours away. I've been here for 19 years. All they talk about is the Yankees and the Mets and the Giants and the Knicks. They don't care about Rutgers being a few minutes away. Rutgers is much closer than Syracuse. Syracuse is like 3 to 4 hours away from New York City. So the impact is pretty minimal.
I think it's different though, because like what people got to remember is when you're doing a regional broadcast, you don't get to choose. So like if you have ABC, and then there's an ACC game, and that's what the contract is on, you're gonna watch that game. So like when it comes to, let's say like CBS's deal on the weekends really matters because you're gonna watch the SEC game that's the closest to your general area. So like while you're right, for the most part, nobody outside of the South gives a damn about college football like that. It's still relative to have there, and it's still something that you'll be surprised, I guess, at how much people do watch. And just being there, I guess, from a monetary standpoint, because that's the thing I always deal with in radio. Like, I get paid. When they flip that switch at 9 p.m. It doesn't matter if people are really listening or not. I get like 60,000 points because that's what our reach is supposed to be. So like that's why I joke when people say like they have a podcast. I'm like, listen, that's dope. That's dope. I got 60,000 listens a night, no matter what, because of that signal. So I mean, and that's where I'm able to market, and able to get stuff. So and that's really what it all comes down to. These television contracts, just like to the NFL, the NFL is like people say they're going to boycott commercials. I think the NFL gives a damn if you boycott McDonald's. The NFL's dealers with ESPN or ABC or whoever is with. They got to write that check no matter what. It's up to the station to go get the money. You give me X amount of millions of dollars a year or billion, whatever, and I don't care how you get to that point. You hope to make $2 billion off of that so that you can turn a profit. So I think that's really what it comes down to, because what's going to happen is, and what needs to happen at this point, if this is the trajectory of college sports, get rid of the bogus definition of amateurism. Because what just happened with the SEC is the SEC, whether like basically, again, like I was saying with COVID, the reason why I knew the sports were going to be played because of money. The SEC, every school is basically starting with $75 to $85 million a year just to have a season. Between the television contract, and the revenue splits and the different things, we can't compete in the ACC. You can't compete with that and leather football money, leather helmet money that some of these old schools have. Like you've got to get away and then just go ahead and call it what it is. True semi-pro. And no, not them old men that decided that they want to pay $150 to basically play adult Pop Warner. I'm talking about actual people getting paid a little bit of money that's not quite professional, but sort of professional.
And I'll say this before we finish up here this week. That's why we've said this before. And you remember, James, your senior season in 2005, when we were playing at Boston College. Boston College's first ACC game, nationally televised at night on ESPN. The following season in 2006, nationally televised on ABC. The following season in 2007, nationally televised on ABC. Why? Because Boston College was a good team at that point. People cared about it. I was at that game in 2005. People gave a damn about it, about Boston College football, because Boston College was a good team. And that's what I've said. The most important week is going to be that first week when you've got Clemson taking on Georgia, Miami taking on Alabama, and Florida State taking on Notre Dame. I think Clemson beats Georgia. I like Georgia, but I think Clemson beats Georgia in that one. And what the ACC needs is they need to be competitive they need Miami to show up against Alabama, and they need Florida State to show up against Notre Dame, because all three of those games will be nationally televised. And the ACC can either lay an egg, or they can show, hey, we can compete with the big boys. And if you get Florida State beating Notre Dame or Miami shocking Alabama, which I don't think either one of those happened, but they could, you never know, But if one of those does happen, all of a sudden the ACC becomes a real conference again. No,
When you say shocking Alabama, what do you mean? Like scoring against them?
Damn. I think Miami will be competitive, and then Alabama will get the ball to start the second half and do like they did against Ohio State. I think Alabama wins convincingly over Miami. But what the ACC can't afford, a 52-7 game. The ACC needs 42-21, 42-24. They need something competitive. They need to keep it within 2 touchdowns against Notre Dame. They need it because it's going to be on national TV. They can't have their 2 big-name programs getting schooled.
I don't think we need to hinge the future of the ACC on one game when Miami's playing Alabama and Alabama's trucking everyone. I don't think it's going to be that big.
Because your argument right now is going to be that this Miami team, and this is just from what we're hearing down here, this is a Miami team that had high hopes after last season. Yes, they got annihilated by North Carolina. They lost in the Cheez-It Bowl to Oklahoma State. And I've said this before. Other than Alabama and North Carolina, there's no real tough teams right now on Miami's schedule. This is a team that on paper should be 10-2. If they beat North Carolina, that's an 11-1 team. I don't think they beat Alabama. I don't think they will be competitive against Alabama, but the ACC needs it. This is a time where the ACC is going to have 3 national TV games within hours of each other, probably back-to-back, and then the Florida State Notre Dame game on Sunday. You'll have one will be at 3:30, one will be at 8 o'clock on Saturday, and then you'll have the 7:30 game on Sunday, Florida State Notre Dame. This is your chance to be on national TV, have your 3 biggest name programs, and you can't have Miami and Florida State lay eggs. That the ACC cannot do that. Otherwise, you are going to be going from the bottom up all season.
Khalil Young, thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution. This is Khalil's 3rd, and for that reason, Khalil, this is what I'm going to do for you. Khalil is asking for an ACC Big Ten comparison over the last 20 years. You know what, Khalil? Be watching your I'm sure you're subscribed. Hit the bell for the notifications. I will post a video. I will compare the ACC and the Big Ten over the last 20 years, especially for you and your 3 Super Chat contributions.
Shout out. Let's give a proper shout out. Shout out to First Coast High School, Duval County, Duval's finest.
Oh, is that what we're looking at there?
FCHS, First Coast High School, Duval. I was going to get James to do the traditional Duval, but he left.
He just bounced.
We're done.
All right, we are done. Florida State football every Wednesday night at 6 o'clock Eastern time, typically with Logan Robinson from NoleGameDay. Hopefully he's not in some drunken stupor somewhere in the corner.
If you see Logan and you're watching us right now live, let him know that Daddy Mark, Daddy Jason still care about him. We want him to get home safely. Somebody get him something to eat. He's probably going to need it. If you're watching this on Thursday morning, somebody find his location and let us know. We will send an Uber to come get him.
James, thanks for dropping by, man.
Florida. Is Logan celebrating that baseball win?
No, Logan's celebrating St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, it is St. Patrick's Day.
Yes.
I forgot.
So you can tell the 3 of us are the old guys here because we've been celebrating.
I have to work, so I can't celebrate. Yeah. I thought you celebrate on the weekend.
No, you
celebrate whatever the day is.
James, you used to get drunk at FSU. Don't lie. You used to get drunk.
I got drunk because it was the day. It didn't matter what day it was when we were celebrating. It could have been Kwanzaa for all I care. I was getting drunk, but that was a different time. Now I have to practice my drinking. I have to space it out and schedule it.
Let me ask a question before we go, guys. At what age did you realize you couldn't handle your alcohol anymore? I was 25. I had just a bad headache.
I can still handle my alcohol. I can't handle cheap alcohol. It's a difference. I have to drink specific alcohols. You can't give me Goldschlager or any other cheap mess.
My consumption went out the door pretty much the day I graduated from college. Just changed completely.
Nice.
Just did.
Anyways, I'll try to be here time Wednesday. Next Wednesday.
Next week, James will be here. I'll be here. Logan, if he's sober enough, will be here.
All right.
I'll be here. See y'all next week.